All right. Welcome everybody to mobile device security. Starting to get close to uh, coming to the end of the semester. Got about 3 more weeks left of lectures. Going to be looking into mobile security this week, and going to kind of look over some of the history of mobile security, um, how it's kind of come about, and some of the problems that kind of face us as either uh, members of an IT security team or pen testers or whatever you may be. It's just some of the kind of things to be looking for and how to secure um, mobile devices in your environment. Let's go ahead and jump right into this particular one. And so let's talk a bit of just about over the past few years, um, the workplace has really done some amazing and incredible and sometimes frightening changes in regards to a large number of mobile devices being introduced into an environment. So the kind of the idea of like a small powerful device that can do many of all the tasks that a notebook or a desktop computer can do. I mean, it's a very attractive idea and it sounds really great because the power of our mobile devices, anything from smartphones to tablets, has gotten to the point where they've become acceptable replacements for day-to-day tasks. Coupled with the ease of use, the long battery life, the low cost, a lot of companies have really jumped on the bandwagon as far as adoption of mobile devices in their environment, and it's spread not only just the personal lives that people use them, but professional. So this has become a real reality to most companies these days. And just to kind of throw a statistic out there is that on average, most people have at least three mobile devices, whether that's going to be their phone, their smart tablet, their notebook, whatever it may be. On average, most people have three of those. So I mean, there's a lot of different ways that we interact with mobile devices on a day-to-day basis. Now, because of that, owners of devices, bring them into the workplace and businesses, and making purchases on them, all this kind of stuff. It's led to a number of problems, including kind of mixing your personal life with your business life, and you're starting to have some inconsistencies as far as the settings and protocols, and then you're introducing devices that could have been compromised, your personal device that could have been compromised into your business environment, therefore compromising your business environment. So this is quite the challenge. Mobile security is really is a challenge for all of us in the field. So this is something that we really have to address. Um, so let's kind of start looking at some things. So there's two obvious consequences with bringing in mobile devices. Uh, there's an increase in productivity and capability, as well as like a corresponding rise to the number of security risks. So designers of devices have frequently kind of made a trade-off between security and features by kind of leaning towards features instead of security. With security is always an afterthought. You ask anybody in IT security field in just about any corporate environment, and they'll tell you that most of their users, security is not the forefront on their mind. Um, while a lot of the security features, they've kind of helped to kind of reduce the issues. Many of the devices that we interact with still have problems to be addressed. So these are still headaches for your local your local IT guy. As most of us know, most operating systems, they come in anywhere from BlackBerry to Windows to Google, Apple, obviously, with the two biggest ones being Apple iOS and Android. Those are, I mean, typically, if you take a room full of about 100 people, the majority of those people are going to be either Apple people or Android people, one of the two. And if you're like die-hard fan of one of them, it's very highly unlikely that you're going to skew from that any time in the future, and people get outright angry about their mobile devices. But well, we're just gonna kind of go over a couple of these things one by one. Some of the goals of mobile security. So with the introduction of with mobile devices into our environment, we're going to talk just a little bit about some of the problems that we face, some of the issues, what you as an administrator, what you as an engineer, what you as an analyst need to be on the lookout for. And these are very real problems that a lot of these you can apply to laptops and not just cell phones and etc. So let's talk about web and network attacks. So typically these types of attacks are launched by malicious websites or compromised legitimate websites, and so the attacking website or the attacker, they're going to send some kind of oddly malformed network content to your browser, and it's going to cause your browser to kind of run some malicious type application of whatever the attacker has created. So that's one of the main ones that you're going to watch for, and this kind of goes hand in hand with another one of the ones we're going to talk about, which is social engineering. The next one that we face when it comes to mobile security is malware. So you can see there malware is going to be broken into kind of three high-level categories. Again, we're not going to dig too deep into these, but traditional computer viruses and worms and Trojan horses and kind of like traditional systems. Malware doesn't plague mobile systems, and in fact, there's pieces of malware designed exclusively for mobile devices and not necessarily desktop. So this is something we have to look out for. Next kind of attack, social engineering. So like phishing. Try to trick your users or trick yourself into kind of disclosing sensitive information. And the thing is about social engineering, they're used to kind of entice someone to install malware on a device. In a lot of cases, social engineering attacks are easier to accomplish on mobile devices, mainly because of their personal nature and the fact that they're already used to share so much information on social media and other types of services. So using social engineering attacks against mobile devices is usually a shoe-in. A lot of things we also have to worry about. We have to worry about data loss. I mean, obviously, we store sensitive information on our cell phones, on our tablets, and I mean, this can be, a lot of times this can be mitigated, using things like encryption, or a lot of people have like the remote wipes on their Apple devices now. But the fact is that this is still pretty serious, especially if you're accessing emails and you're holding data on your mobile devices. That's not only your personal device, but it's also your company device. But we're going to dig into that a little bit later. Data theft, that's always also a problem. Cyber criminals are trying to use those mobile devices, to try to access, steal sensitive information. So these are definitely the types of goals, the types of things that we're constantly on the lookout for when it comes to mobile security. All right. So let's talk a little bit about some of the 5 key areas of addressing security when it comes to mobile devices. So we know we've kind of seen some of the attacks that are out there. So what's the goal? What do we need to address when it comes to mobile security? So how do we do that? So first of all, we need to talk about access control. So when it comes to access control is this in a nutshell. It's used to kind of protect a device, like anything, something like a password, using your thumbprint. We talked about biometrics at the beginning of the semester. A lot of times what you'll start hearing things thrown around like least privilege technologies, especially when it comes to usernames and passwords. You'll have separate accounts to be able to log into a mobile device. Well, this person's given administrative rights, this person's given guest rights. So, control, you always want to give least privilege to your users out there. The least amount of access that they need to have in order to do their job. Another one of the big ones that we're starting to see as far as security models is digital signing. Um, and this is a big part of like the kind of application model of most, but not all mobile devices. So digital signing is a feature that allows applications to kind of be signed so that they can be verified. Who the originator or who the author is, and they can't be tampered with. We talked a little bit about that earlier in the semester. So digital signing, it's not required, but Android, won't allow the installation of like applications from like unknown sources by default. So you actually have to set that setting. And in Apple, applications like from unknown sources, it can't be installed. A period, unless the person of the phone, the owner of the phone, they specifically modify or basically jailbreak your phone to kind of allow those third party applications. Another one that we try to use is encryption. And again, we've talked about encryption toward the beginning of the semester. It's basically put on devices to kind of ensure that data is kept safe in the event that it's lost or stolen or something like that. It's not always implemented on a lot of phones in the past, but that's starting to change. We're starting to see a real shift in that with requiring certain. I believe it's Android 6.0. I think it was Marshmallow when it started coming out. It actually required storage to be encrypted by default. So we're starting to see encryption on mobile devices now. So that's always a good. Talking about isolation. Trying to limit access that an application on your phone has. So this is really, really important. Essentially, this is a form of least privilege, like we were talking about before. So least amount of privilege given to that application, where it doesn't need to access all your sensitive information, just enough to to do its job. And then you have what's called like permissions based access control, and this works much like it does on a server or like a desktop operating system. It kind of helps you to limit the scope of access of an application by kind of blocking actions that a user may attempt, but that hasn't been granted access to. All right. So we've kind of talked about the goals of mobile security, some of the ways of addressing. Let's talk about some of the devices themselves. A little bit about Android. Android, kind of got started back in 2003, and it was acquired by Google in 2005. And from the very beginning, the operating system for Android was designed to be a mobile platform, and it was supposed to have a lot of the bells and whistles, like a lot of powerful, real powerful, very mobile and open source. And Android's been installed on a wide range of different devices, and it supports all kinds of integration with a lot of different advanced technology. So that's what it's so versatile. And it's also been used to kind of integrate with like external data sources like cloud services and other types of technology to run applications kind of locally. So to kind of provide those types of features for the Android and kind of do it safely and securely, Google they kind of had to follow the 5 tenets that we kind of mentioned earlier. And this resulted in insecurity for users, data applications, the device itself, and the network as a whole. So that's something that they tried to stick to. So Android was kind of envisioned and created with this multi-layered security model that it kind of allows some some flexibility in as far as the open platform is concerned, and at the same time, trying to provide protection for users, and their applications. Another big goal of Android is to support developers and make the platform easy to work with and easy to kind of engage those security controls that we were mentioning earlier. So in practice, developers should be able to easily call on security controls of the Android device and I mean, if they're experienced, developers, that they can kind of tweak the controls and as needed, and less experienced developers, that are kind of unfamiliar with proper security settings, they can be protected because the system kind of puts those default settings in place to kind of ensure that the safety and security is maintained. So that's a great thing about Android. And something that I personally really like, even though I'll switch back and forth. I'm one of those rare people that will go back and forth in between them. So the thing about Android, as far as the people that use Android, so Android was kind of developed to make it easy on developers to develop and deploy applications, and with the user in mind. So with this, the system was kind of developed with an expectation that attacks would happen, and common malware issues, data theft, and stuff like that. So it was designed with the idea that the users themselves, they're gonna try things that are going to affect the system. That this was the mindset of the developers. So Android was designed to kind of allow the user to work with the system, kind of do everyday tasks, but not give them a kind of a high level of access. More specifically, Android doesn't they don't want to let the user have root access to the system without deliberately overriding the protections that are in place. So that this kind of goes hand in hand with Linux. There are protections in place in a lot of Linux applications, a lot of Linux operating systems where you have to sudo into root in order to do certain things to kind of protect you as the user. So kind of the design of Android, you have a series of kind of components kind of working together to make the system work. And there are separate components in the system, and they're self-contained to kind of focus on doing whatever task it was designed to do. And each component focuses on a security measure for itself, and assumes that that every other component is also doing the same thing. Try to keep everything separate. Think of it almost like an ice tray. You have you have an ice tray that's filled with water, and that all the different little sections are creating ice, but they're creating ice in their own little section, separate from everybody else. So this is kind of a good thing about Android and how it's kind of developed. But some of the thing about this, the basics kind of Android. You've got the hardware, where Android kind of runs on a wide different range of hardware, anything from smartphones, tablets, and stuff like that. And I mean, even smartphones, they are kind of getting out that way to smartphones. And you get the operating system, so it's built on top of the Linux kernel, which we were just talking about. Anything like the camera functions, the GPS, the Bluetooth, the network connections, the telephone functions, they're accessed, kind of through the operating system. That's how all those work. And then you have, specific Android applications that kind of extend the Android operating system, and there's usually two primary sources of the applications. You have those pre-installed applications that come with Android, or you have aftermarket user installed applications that kind of allow you to put third-party apps. Like Google Play offers all those different hundreds of different thousands of applications out there. So there's a lot of good stuff. So that's kind of, but the good thing about is Android is very customizable, and it would be nice if I could actually look at that. See, even I make mistakes here. Look at that. Can't spell customizable. So, the good thing about Android, it's very customizable. So this really helps with security. Well, we're going to jump into that here shortly. So let's go ahead and go to Apple. So, um, we were kind of talking about the 5 tenets of trying to secure a Android, Android phone or mobile device. And iPhone. I mean, it is based off the Mac, the OS X operating system, which is based off of FreeBSD. It's not fully Unix compatible, the Apple iOS. So kind of unlike Android, which kind of covers the 5 tenets that we were talking about. Mac usually covers only about 4, and usually it's the traditional access control. iOS provides traditional access control with some security options, including like password configuration options and account lockout options, stuff like that. Uh, um, and then there, they Apple has the application provenance. Just as Android items that are in the kind of the Google Play Store have been verified and then they're trusted. iOS is the kind of same kind of deal with apps being created by Apple approved developers who they'll sign their app before placing it to the store. To make sure that there's nothing in there that could be potentially harmful. Apple always implements encryption, so to kind of encrypt the data that's stored on the device, and then you also have the isolation, isolating each app from other apps, so that one again, much like the Ice Cube tray that I was talking about. um, kind of with all this in mind, when it comes to iPhones, or you got to understand that a lot of the manufacturers of smartphones and tablets and game consoles, and then they all include, well, not all of them. A lot of them include like digital rights management in their products. So basically DRMs. These are there to kind of exist, to kind of control the types of software you can run on your device. At the same time, kind of preserving the security and so this is kind of where jailbreaking comes in. So jailbreaking is, if you don't know what jailbreaking is, it's used to kind of get around the restrictions imposed by the kind of the digital rights management, and it kind of lets you run whatever you want. So you have these restrictions in place by Apple, and trying to jailbreak your device, you need to have root access. So that's kind of the way that people try to get around those restrictions by jailbreaking. So from a kind of technical standpoint. It's jailbreaking is just simply applying a set of kernel level, baseboard of the operating system patches to a system to kind of allow the person who's trying to jailbreak it to run unsigned applications. In the simplest form, that's what it is. In doing this, it kind of grants that root access to the device, and it removes restrictions that users have for not having that root access. And the bad thing is that first of all, it voids your warranty, and that's if you're concerned and you're accident prone like I am, this can be a problem. And the other drawback is that you're opening a device with so much access that anything can run it without restrictions, and this is going to include malware. So this is where you're going to really open yourself up to some potential problems other than just simply, oh, well, I've avoided my warranty. So this is definitely an issue. So let's talk about some of these common problems. We've talked about the goals. What do we want to do? We've talked about, how we go about doing that. What are some of the things? Access control, digital signing, isolation, these types of things. There's the different operating systems. But what are some of the common problems with these mobile devices? A lot of times what we'll see is, a lot of times people don't set passwords. Or if they do set passwords on their devices, they're incredibly weak. And this is, as an administrator, can absolutely drive you up the wall. is people having a company phone or a personal phone, whatever it may be, that connects to the corporate, and they don't lock their phones. They don't have a password on it. So a lot of devices do offer like a simple. They use kind of the biometric for authentication instead of a password. Um, there's still flaws from being the norm. I don't know about you, but when it's something, a lot of times if I have something on my finger or something like a smear, something you can't access your phone correctly. Uh, Most devices do support passwords, and you can always plug in that PIN or that password, uh, to kind of get those devices opened up. So, if the device is lost or stolen, that data can still be accessed even with no password on. So that's something you really got to keep in mind. Um, Here's another thing, so unprotected wireless connection. So most of the time, people want to connect, to a Wi-Fi somewhere, and this is a known issue with just about every wireless, connectivity. Um, a lot of people that own these devices, being out and about, they're finding open access points, connecting to it, just trying to get a quick internet, and they're not thinking about that this stuff, everything they're transmitting, somebody can be snooping and sniffing that traffic and seeing what they're doing. And this is always a potential problem. So another, real common. This kind of leads us into the next one, which is malware. Um, and this is more of an issue with mobile devices. Um, Owners, downloading apps, and this is, problem like I was saying with the jailbreaking, downloading apps from the internet. They're not really thinking about what they're doing. That has malware in it, and they don't have a malware scanner on their device, or any kind of protection on it. So this is, a potential problem. And that's the thing is users. A lot of people, they just neglect to install security on their mobile devices, even though there's tons of software out there that would help, to kind of protect them. A lot of people that have mobile devices that maybe they just don't realize that there is malware out there designed specifically for mobile devices, and they just don't know it. So this is also a really common problem. Um, Another one is out of date patches, operating system and patches. Operating system software is a big problem. Just like your desktop, there are fixes for mobile devices operating system, and it's released from time to time. And a lot of times, these patches may not get applied for whatever number of reasons. One of the bigger ones tends to be like AT&T. You know, they're tweaking some of their Androids devices into something that includes their applications and some of their bloatware that goes out there. So when this happens, the patches and the updates that Google releases, they may not work on these tweaked versions of AT&T. And so in this case, you would have to wait for an update to be made for your device by AT&T before you can apply the patches. So all this time in between, this can take months or even a year in some cases before AT&T releases the patch from Google because of all their bloatware and junk that they're sending out to your operating systems. Um, Another thing is different patches for the different applications that have become vulnerable, not just the operating system. Um, Having internet connections. Again, we talked about the Wi-Fi being insecure. Somebody getting in your system, and some that we talked about earlier. People taking over just by monitoring what you're doing. We talked about earlier, just the rooted devices, the jailbreak, the devices connected to your network and your company or your corporate environment, and their device has been compromised because they decided to jailbreak it. Another really common problem especially with Android devices, um, there's a when it comes to Android, there's a lot of different versions of Android operating systems with different features and capabilities and all this kind of stuff, and this can really lead to a lot of support problems for a corporation, due to just the amount of variation and inconsistency when it comes to mobile devices. Um, These are just some of the problems that exist on mobile devices. Doesn't necessarily mean it's all of them. So you really have to do your due diligence, when managing an environment that kind of allows these problems on your device. And one way to kind of help you get a snapshot of kind of some of the known problems in the mobile area is to look at OWASP, the Open Web Application Security Project. So I think we've talked about it when we talked about web application. They kind of keep track of kind of the various issues, like in regards to web applications. And they also have a lot of top 10 lists, varying issues, including like mobile device problems. You may want to check out the site. But I think one of the main areas that we've really started to see creep up, especially in as far as the forefront and the problems of corporate, is bring your own device. So that's supposed to be D. See, I even make mistakes. Sorry, class. So the bring your own device. This has really given a big headache for a lot of IT managers and corporations, because of the potential problems that you can, bring into your workplace. This is really accelerated, and I can understand why you would be okay with this. If any of you don't know what the BYOD, bring your own device, is, and basically employees, they kind of provide their own equipment, and like smartphones, laptops, tablets, types of electronics. So when employees bring their own stuff in, it's mainly like tablets or smartphones, more than laptops. And usually laptops are usually issued by the company. So usually these devices, are connected to the corporate network, and the employees use these devices to kind of help assist do their jobs. So obviously, you can see the benefit of those. And most employees, they kind of come to expect that they're going to be able to do that. They're going to be able to connect their smartphones and personal devices. The problem with this is that, kind of maintaining a secure environment with equipment that the company doesn't own, and may not even have any kind of management over. I mean, this is a tough problem. So a lot of companies, they've kind of taken steps to kind of define their position on how, policies and procedures, and how they're going to be allowed to interact with, kind of corporate services. So especially IT departments, by necessity, have to be extra vigilant, kind of about the security issues that can appear. And I think one of the biggest defenses that can be used initially for IT and security is to clearly detail the requirements, each device it has to meet before being able to bring it to the corporate environment. For example, like a policy may need to be established, stating like, hey, devices, if you want to bring your own device, they have to meet certain standards like patches and anti-malware, password requirements, blacklisting certain applications. You really have to spell it out for people. And in practice, two things, should happen administratively to kind of make sure these things get done right. The first one, there needs to be a policy. A policy should exist that states kind of responsibilities of the system administrator, and in regards to kind of how your corporation is going to handle mobile devices. And second, the policy should be created and be made aware to all the end users so they understand. So maybe something on the onboarding process, when you're bringing them on board into a company, hey, look, this is our mobile device policy. This is how you're able to connect to the network, and this is what's required of you, and this kind of thing. So trying to address all these concerns by IT security, you have these bring your own device policies, procedures. You have people bringing in their stuff. So how can you really kind of check that security? So first thing you can do is footprint. So there's a lot of scanning tools that can be used to kind of locate and identify mobile devices. A lot of third-party tools. Anytime something plugged into the work, I like Nmap. Nmap, is a really great device. A really great tool. It can be used to kind of fingerprint the operating system. and kind of return that information as far as the version, the type, and all that kind of good stuff. And once you kind of find the mobile devices that are out there, you just kind of have to make sure to kind of note, the information like the MAC address, the IP address, the version, the type, and anything else like that. And then you want to start doing some scanning. So when you start scanning for mobile devices, you're kind of evaluating, and you kind of use. There's lots of different pieces of software out there. Kind of find out, which wireless networks the devices are looking for. What they're connecting to. Start looking. What are some of the weaknesses that you're seeing. Now. All right, so as far as the exploitation, let me kind of be clear here. If you have a lot of people that are bringing personal devices, you don't want to try to exploit, people's devices, unless that's spell it out in your policy procedure saying, hey, maybe not so much trying to exploit that. You don't want to try to start using man-in-the-middle attacks and spoofing and stuff like that. If you do that, you might be opening yourself up for bigger problems. But if these are company devices that people are using, then yeah, absolutely. Then you want to try to exploit any kind of thing you see out there that's vulnerable. And if that's out there, you might want to see if people are storing this kind of the post exploitation, kind of inspecting see if there's any kind of sensitive data on any of those mobile devices. Looking for kind of SMSs and browser history, and see if people are storing stuff that they shouldn't be storing on company devices. So that's definitely a problem. So kind of looking at these things, you want to start moving forward. Looking after you do the footprinting and scanning, and you want to try to start making sure people are using strong passwords on these devices. So this is really, really important. I realize you have the biometrics, but what's the hurt? And also just throwing a password on there as well. And especially if they're going to be attached to a corporate network and there's going to be sensitive data on it, it's worth enabling those certain features. Especially when it comes to encryption and require that password before it'll work. And a lot of times the devices allow you to kind of set gestures or the PIN codes or sometimes an alphanumeric password, so that's always good too. There is tons of anti-malware applications out there for mobile devices. Ideally, anti-malware applications should scan not only the device but also any kind of newly installed applications or mail, for kind of maximize your effectiveness. They definitely want that kind of stuff on there. Using encryption on anything from the internal storage to like SD cards. Trying to protect the data that's on there, especially when it comes to some older devices and operating systems. They don't store encryption, but that's changing, because most people change their phone over every year to 2 years. And being smart about it. Avoid installing applications from unknown sources. Don't stop jailbreaking your phone. It's not always in your best interest to do so, especially if it's a corporate device. Backing your device up. Do I really need to say much more about that? There's probably not a single person listening to this lecture at this moment that has not had a failure somehow and didn't back up their stuff. So that's always something we need to look at. So to kind of I know this has kind of been a quick and dirty of mobile device security, but these are just essential security best practices for mobile devices. Mobile devices, they're kind of taking over the world right now. This rapid growth of mobile devices and applications, and I think if I'm not mistaken, one of the most profitable jobs to have right now is mobile device application development. And so you can make a ton of money right out of college with this. So kind of along with the growth, there's these security issues that kind of plague mobile devices, and it is important to have a small, powerful device that you can connect to the internet, and you can allows you to connect, communicate anywhere, and it's very alluring, but at the same time, you've got to be able to secure your environment. So when it comes to testing this stuff, either as a pen tester or within your own company, you're going to have to familiarize yourself with the similarities and differences of all the different devices, and these devices are going to require a combination of different methods to try to learn how to secure them. I mean, we just kind of talked about some of these briefly, but these are nonetheless very, very important moving forward. So keep all these things in mind, and we will talk to you next week.